So I went from this to this in less than a year. And in this video, I'm gonna tell you how I did it. So my first abnormal pap was in October of 2024, last year. That's when I had the HSIL and the HPV positive result. And then my next pap was in February of this year, so about 4 months later, and I was still HPV positive, and I had an ASC-H result, which means atypical squamous cells cannot exclude a high-grade lesion. So at that point, I figured I was probably in between like SIN 1 and SIN 2, so it had regressed a little bit. I was happy with it, but I wish I would have gotten better results. But then a couple weeks ago, I'm so excited to be able to say I was clear from HPV, no HPV present, and my pap was totally normal. Like, thank God. So I'm so happy about that, and I'm so excited to be able to share what I did to get these results. Before I get started, just know I'm not a doctor, and this is not medical advice. I'm not a medical professional. This is just what I did and what helped me to clear my HPV and dysplasia. Okay, so less than a year ago, I had a pap smear. I hadn't had one in about 5 years, but the one I had 5 years before was normal. So I'm guessing these cell changes just happened over the course of those 5 years. But that's honestly not surprising to me because my immune system wasn't very strong. I'd had 4 kids in the span of 5 years. So my immune system was in terrible shape. And your immune system is very important when you're trying to clear HPV. It really needs to be working properly, optimally. It's really important. So the pap smear I had done last October came back as positive for high-risk HPV and HSIL, which means usually SIN 2 or SIN 3 is the level of your dysplasia with that result. So doctors told me that SIN 2 or SIN 3 would not regress on its own, and surgery was really the only option. But I knew this was a surgery that could have really bad side effects. It can affect, if I wanted to have more children, it could affect that or possibly make it impossible for me to have more children. It can have long-lasting effects like chronic pain, chronic sexual dysfunction. All of these are things, a doctor doesn't really talk about when they're telling you your options. So I knew at that point that surgery just wasn't an option for me at the moment. So I started doing a lot of research to see what other people had done to clear their HPV. At first, after receiving this diagnosis, I just want to mention it was a really dark time in my life. It was really hard. I just had a baby not that long ago, and finding this out that I had HSIL and HPV was really devastating. But as a Catholic, I lean very heavily on my faith, so I just started praying every day and just completely devoting my time. Every time my kids went to bed, like all night, I would just read success stories. I would research, and I found a lot of comfort in other people's success stories. So I knew it was possible to heal, and I started to feel very positive and hopeful that I would be able to clear this. So one of the first things I started taking was AHCC, which, as a lot of people know, it's a proven supplement. It has some pretty good studies showing that it can help clear HPV and dysplasia. So that's what I started taking for the first 5 months, I think, after my diagnosis. But after doing a lot more research, I think a good multi-mushroom supplement is just as important as AHCC. Just make sure that it uses the fruiting body of the mushroom and that it's organic. Those are pretty important. But I know AHCC is expensive, so I think really just any good mushroom supplement will work just as well. But that's just my opinion. I started taking a 5 Defender mushroom. This is a really good brand. And I also got some turkey tail from that's this brand as well. And so I took 2 of the turkey tail and 2 of these each day. Like I said, I was taking the AHCC for about 5 months after my abnormal pap. And then I did get another pap, but I still was HPV positive. And after that PAP is when I stopped taking the AHCC and switched to these mushroom supplements, which is why I think they work just as well, because I was able to clear my HPV from my second PAP to my third PAP. I also was taking a lot of other supplements, and I have a video with all the supplements that I was taking, so I'll provide a link to that. The most important supplements, I think, for clearing my HPV were I3C and DEM. These are very important for estrogen detoxification. If you have a lot of estrogen, cause your dysplasia to not regress. So I think these were really important for my healing. My doctor recommended these as well for me. He said he'd seen other people take these and clear their HPV. So I think this had a lot to do with me being able to clear mine. Another supplement that's really important is methylfolate. Every woman should be taking methylfolate. It's very important. And make sure it's methylfolate and not folic acid, because a lot of people have a genetic mutation that causes your body to not be able to, to convert folic acid into methylfolate. So it's better to just take methylfolate. I also took a multivitamin, a good multivitamin, green tea extract, turmeric, beta carotene. Those are very beneficial as well, and they all have a lot of studies backing them for clearing HPV and dysplasia. So I also limited my sugar and alcohol intake, but I did not give up either completely. So I also made sure I was eating a lot of whole foods, eggs, cheese, organic fruits and vegetables, red meat, which contrary to popular belief is actually very beneficial for you. Just try to make sure like it's grass-fed, grass-finished, organic. I also ate crushed raw garlic. Garlic is antiviral and it's really good for your immune system, so I thought it couldn't hurt. So I would crush it and let it sit for 10 minutes to get the full health effect, and then I would eat it. I'd usually just mix it with something I was eating because it's very strong, so you can't just eat it by itself. You'll want to mix it with something. The main thing I did with my diet is I just tried to eat mindfully. Like whatever I put into my body, I wanted it to serve a purpose for my body. I wanted it to be able to help my immune system do what I needed it to do. So I truly believe that what you put into your body may be one of the most important things that you do to clear your HPV and dysplasia. But one of the most out-of-the-box things I did was use hydrogen peroxide on my cervix. I know, crazy, right? But not really. So hydrogen peroxide is 2 parts oxygen, and bad cells and cancer cells have a really hard time surviving in an oxygen-rich environment. So basically, hydrogen peroxide encourages cell death. Part of the reason dysplasia occurs is because HPV prevents these bad cells from being able to die off like they normally would. And it continues to mutate them until they turn into dysplasia, and then they continue to get worse, and sometimes they turn into cancer. So hydrogen peroxide encourages these cells to die like they're supposed to. And if you look it up, hydrogen peroxide is also used to sanitize surfaces that have been infected with HPV in like doctors' offices. So for me, it just makes sense that hydrogen peroxide could help me clear my HPV, because HPV literally lives in and on your cervix. So applying the hydrogen peroxide to that area, it just makes sense that it would be able to help you get rid of your HPV, to me at least. But there really is growing research that hydrogen peroxide can help with cancer cells. In Europe, they just did a study using it for breast cancer with pretty good results. Someone else told me that using hydrogen peroxide vaginally would just destroy my vagina, destroy my vaginal pH. But this could not be further from the truth. My vagina felt healthier than it's felt in years after doing it. If you look at research, there's studies out there where women use it for bacterial vaginosis with very good results. It's very good at balancing the pH of your vagina. And the pH of your vagina is actually very important if you're trying to get rid of HPV and dysplasia. It needs to be at an optimal level to be able to do this. So for the hydrogen peroxide treatment, I originally used 1.5 to 3% with a syringe. I would just lay on my back and insert it vaginally, and I would let it sit for 10 minutes. I think I did this twice a week for maybe a month, and then once a week for a few months before my second PAP in February. So while I do think that was helping, I don't think it was strong enough to give me the results I was looking for, because in my repeat PAP in February, I still had HPV and I had an ASTH PAP result, which means atypical squamous cells cannot exclude a high-grade lesion. So my HPV was still there and my dysplasia was still there. So I went to see my doctor and I asked him to look at my cervix with the colposcope and apply the vinegar and tell me what he thought he was looking at. So he said it looked like SIN 1, possibly SIN 2, which I was happy with because I had a HSIL PAP 5 months before. So I do think that my cervix had been improving in those 5 months. But my HPV was still there. So I decided that I wanted to do a stronger percentage of hydrogen peroxide. So I bought some 12% food grade hydrogen peroxide and I diluted it to get 6%. How I did this was I mixed a tablespoon of the 12% and a tablespoon of distilled water, and I would mix that together. I also bought some speculums from In His Hands Birth Supply. And these are really nice because there's also a built-in light so you can kind of see what you're looking at. So I bought the speculum because I wanted to be able to look at my cervix and apply the hydrogen peroxide directly onto my cervix. Since it was a higher percentage, I thought it would be best to do it that way. So on April 2nd of this year, I applied the 6% hydrogen peroxide directly onto my cervix with the help of my husband. I let it sit for about 10 minutes. So getting used to using a speculum is kind of difficult at first. You will probably need some help. Thankfully, I had my husband to help me, but you could definitely do it by yourself with some practice. The best thing to do is put some coconut oil on the speculum before you insert it, because it makes it a lot easier to do that. And then once you kind of get the speculum in the right position, you squeeze the handle and it'll open up your vagina so you can essentially see your cervix, so you'll know like where to put the hydrogen peroxide. So everybody's cervix is kind of like a little different. You know, it might be angled to the right or to the left. So it just takes some getting used to finding it, I guess. It actually took us a while to find my cervix because mine is kind of tilted a certain way. For applying the hydrogen peroxide, I got the 6% and I used a syringe. So I filled up the syringe and I squirted the hydrogen peroxide directly onto my cervix while the speculum was inside of it. And then I laid on my back to do this with a pillow under my butt with kind of, I guess my legs were kind of up in the air. But I did that so that the hydrogen peroxide wouldn't just fall right out. So it would be able to sit on my cervix for those 10 minutes. So that's really important to do it that way. After the 10 minutes went by, I would go straight to the bathtub and rinse it out, because when the 6% hydrogen peroxide came in contact with my vulva and like the vaginal walls, it can sting a little bit. So I like to just rinse it off as soon as I was done. So I repeated this again on April 4th, so 2 days later. So after I did this, my cervix looked pretty gnarly. It looked pretty bad. So I let it heal for a while before checking it again. I did look at it again on April 21st and it looked a lot better. So I took that to mean it was healing nicely. On May 12th, I repeated the 6% hydrogen peroxide for 10 minutes. And looking back at my notes, I only did that once in May because my cervix looked pretty rough after that. So after that, I just focused on letting my cervix heal, eating healthy, keeping up with my supplements, keeping a positive attitude. And when I looked at my cervix a couple weeks ago before my most recent PAP, it was looking really good. So I was very hopeful that I would get good results, and I did. So I don't attribute any one thing to healing my HPV and dysplasia, but I look at it as a combination of everything. Diet is so important. The right supplements are so important. And I do also believe the hydrogen peroxide helped me as well. But it's really just all about boosting your immune system so it can fight this virus. But healing is very possible, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Before I end this video, I also want to emphasize that if you're trying to heal HPV naturally, it's really important to monitor your progress by regular pap smears, or you can even have your doctor look at your cervix through a colposcope. I did that as well. But it is important to be proactive and stay on top of it. Not only for your own peace of mind, but it really is just the smart thing to do. I'm also going to say, like, this is what worked for me personally. I'm not going to say that it's for sure going to work for you if you do this, but this is what worked for me. So now that you know what I did do, here's what I didn't do. I did not get vaccinated. Look up Aaron Crawford's Gardasil story on YouTube, and that will tell you everything you need to know. I did not give up coffee because this mama needs caffeine. I did find a really good organic mushroom coffee that I like, and I'm just going to continue to drink that because I really like it. So I didn't sign up for any programs online with any doctors saying they could help me heal my HPV because, you know, it costs thousands of dollars to do that. And usually with a lot of research and dedication, you can easily do that yourself. I did not get a biopsy. I wasn't going to get a leap, so I didn't feel like that was necessary for me at the time. For a biopsy, a traditional biopsy, they literally punch a little piece of your cervix out. And, you know, for some people, okay, it's not going to hurt. But for some people, it's very painful. So for me, it didn't seem like it was worth going through that. I did decide that if my most recent pap wasn't normal, I was going to drive to Chattanooga, Tennessee, because there's a doctor there who does soft brush biopsies, which are much less invasive, much less painful, and just as accurate as the traditional punch biopsy. And last but not least, I did not give up hope. I truly believed that I would be able to clear this naturally. I was super scared and worried in the beginning, but eventually I was able to let go of that fear and trust God and His plan for me. Because honestly, ever since being diagnosed with HPV, I feel like I've become a much healthier person mentally, spiritually, physically, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm so happy to be able to say that I finally beat this, and I know that you can too. So that's how I cleared my HPV and dysplasia. Be sure to like and subscribe and check out my supplement video because that has everything, all the supplements I took. But in closing, I just wanted everyone to know that healing is very possible. Thanks for watching.